Welcome back, fellow half-ass viewers. If you're new here, welcome to the struggle. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back to the chaos. Last time, we fought this build every step of the way, from degreeing the camshaft and dealing with off-mark dampers to inconsistent pushrod lengths. We finally thought that we were over the hump. In this episode, we move on to the oil pump, pickup, and windage tray. We even started painting the block to give this motor the look it deserves. But then, catastrophe struck. While our backs were turned, the engine stand gave way and the entire engine hit the concrete hard. Is the block trashed? Is the crank okay? What actually broke? Because we saw pieces on the floor. Can we save it, or is this officially a scrap heap? Stick around to find out. So here we are prepping the windage tray bolts. They're cleaned off nice and good, but we also like to put a little bit of Loctite primer on the threads of the bolts and in the block. It helps activate the surface and makes the Loctite act a lot stronger, more aggressive. So after putting a couple of drops on each of the bolts, we're screwing them in. Obviously the windage tray is in place, and we're going to torque those things down because we don't want those bolts coming loose. Now we put the gasket on for the oil pickup tube, and the same thing with those. We put Loctite primer on those as well as Loctite. We're going to torque that down because, again, once that oil pan's out of there and the engine's in place, we don't want this thing coming loose. That would not be a good thing. So now we're cleaning out the block, and at the same time, or I should say, we're cleaning out the block where the oil pan gas is going to go. We want that to be nice and clean, no oil, no nothing. We're also putting a couple of dabs of RTV gasket maker in the back there where the rubber pan seal goes. It's important to make sure that's sitting in there properly. We've also poured a little bit more assembly lube on the crankshaft, and now we're putting the cork gasket in place. Notice you have to put a little bit of sealant in certain locations to make sure that the overlapping seams get sealed. And now we're putting the oil pan on. Torquing all the bolts down snugly at first and in an alternating pattern once we get to the torquing side of things. So now we're at the bolts near the front of the engine, and we could not get the bolts to pass through the oil pan into the block cleanly. It looked like the holes, well, it didn't look like, the holes were not lining up correctly. Didn't look like the pan was manufactured quite correctly. Didn't match the holes of the block. So we had tried to loosen all the other bolts and persuade the pan forward a little bit, but that didn't work. So we loosened the bolts, masked off the oil pump cavity, and we're taking a Dremel tool with a carbide bit and very carefully, slowly opening up the hole in the oil pan that would not cooperate. So as you can see, we're holding a shop vac there. We're sucking up all the burrs and chips as we go, and again, very careful to not hit the block threads. We only want to open up the hole in the oil pan. So here's a close-up of the slow, painfully slow, careful action of opening up that hole in the oil pan just enough so that we can get the bolt in there. Finally got it to a point where we could pass the bolt through and not cross-thread it into the block. So we were happy with that. We were able to get it started. Hard to get a socket on there unless you have a wowel extension, which you'll see here in a sec. There it is. But we finally got it down. So all the bolts are now being torqued down to their final value. You don't want to go overboard on torquing these bolts because the pan can warp slightly in different places if you're going too tight, and that'll cause an oil leak at those points where the gasket's pinched too much. Upon inspecting the original oil pump, we found significant scoring on the end plate, hardly a surprise after 60 years of service. The pump gear teeth were also chipped and worn, which made the decision to replace everything an easy one. So we picked up a new oil pump kit that included gears, pressure relief springs, and a booster plate. Typically you'd use that booster plate in combination with the old timing case cover if it showed the kind of scoring we found on ours. But since we opted to replace the entire cover with a new unit, the booster plate wasn't necessary for our build. Now it's time to check the clearance between the oil pump housing and its cover. There's a very specific process that you have to go through, and here we're going to try to describe this. Basically, you have to take a straight edge, put it across the gears, and measure the gap between the straight edge and the oil pump housing. record that gap, and then add the correct number of shims to make sure that you get 2 thousandths to 0.0058 thousandths of space there between the oil pump cover and the top of those gears. So here we are measuring our oil pump gaskets. The kit comes with an assortment of shims, and you figure out which selection of shims you need to make sure that you have the right clearance in there. So now we're testing that out. We're putting the correct number of shims in there. We're going to torque down the cover of the oil pump, and we're going to spin it, make sure that we got a nice free spin and no binding, no scratching, no nothing like that. And once we're assured that and here we are spinning the oil pump shaft with a screwdriver. It was spinning just fine. So now we take it all apart because we know we have our clearance set correctly. So now we're replacing our pressure relief valve in the oil pump cover. It's important to do that. Again, you know, this car is over 60 years old, or pushing it, that's for sure. Might as well, it came with the kit. So we're changing the pressure relief valve. Make sure you use the right spring that comes with it. That's dependent on the engine, of course. So now we're taking the oil pump gears out and we're packing that cavity with Vaseline. Yes, Vaseline. The reason for this is these pumps can starve of oil. They cavitate. If there's any air in there, it will not suck up the oil. So what the Buick Riviera engineers decided to do, which I think is kind of brilliant, is to say pack that cavity with Vaseline. That way there's no air trapped in there, and when the engine starts up for the first time, it won't suck air and you won't starve your engine of oil and you won't wreck it the very first seconds of starting it up. So, flipping the engine over, now I'm putting the engine coolant temperature sensor in. Put a lot of RTV maker on the threads because if you remember in a previous episode I kind of bunged up the threads in the intake manifold and we don't want any leaks there. Also putting some RTV maker on the thermostat housing gasket, both sides, because there was a little pitting going on. Again, 60-year-old parts, it's to be expected. So we just don't want to rely completely on the gasket. So the RTV maker will help close those pits up. And here is the unveiling. Ta-da! Oh, isn't she beautiful? Yes, indeed. Now it's time for some paint. We want to make it look pretty, right? It's only natural. Nice new engine. We want to make it look good. So we use that product here. It's supposed to be a Buick red. We're painting it on with brushes. It seemed to be the easier way to do that than spray paint. Yeah, but in retrospect, it probably didn't matter either way. Anyway, we're putting a coat on all over the place, as you can see, but we're trying to be careful. We want to make sure we don't get paint on surfaces that we don't want it on. Obviously, we like the bare aluminum look of the water pump on the cover, the timing chain cover. There we go. Looks nice that way. So just sit back, relax, enjoy this time lapse of painting the engine. All right, folks, slight catastrophe here. Nobody got hurt, but look what happened here. This engine just tipped when we rotated it to paint it. It hit the floor pretty hard. We hope we haven't damaged anything. Hopefully heads are okay.
I'm seeing a piece already right there.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Good God. All right. Well, we're going to have to get the hoist out. We're going to have to lift this puppy up and see what the hell's going on. What is that? What do you think that is?
Well, looks cast iron. I don't know.
And, of course, paint in the valve train.
Oh, man.
My God. All right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to stop filming. We're going to clean this up and see what's going on. So yeah, as you guys can all imagine, we were feeling really lousy about this whole episode. But you know what? We have overcome so many different challenges and weird things with this motor. We were not about to stop now. And you all have been with us this entire journey so far. We want to say thank you for being with us for this whole adventure. And we are not going to stop. We are going to make this work come hell or high water. We may be half-assed, but we are determined and we do things right and we see things through. So what we're doing here is lifting the engine up off the floor with our hoist, and we've removed the engine stand that was attached to the back of the engine because we've got a new engine stand here. We're done with the three-legged stuff. We're going only with four-legged or four-wheel engine stands, as you can see here. Much more stable. This one's rated for 1,300 pounds. One of the things though that we're having a trouble with, as you can see, it doesn't work well with the engine hoist that we have. It's a classic engine hoist. You know, it's the classic type with the wheels and the legs that are splayed out at the bottom. But as you can see, the four-wheeled engine stand doesn't cooperate well with this type of engine hoist. So if you all in YouTube land have any ideas or suggestions as to how to make this work better, we were kind of struggling with this and we couldn't really figure out a good way to mate this up safely and easily. So please, in the comments, if you have a suggestion on how to make this work a little bit better, we'd love to hear from you. So anyway, we finally got this thing on the new engine stand. And after a little more farting around, we were able to get it down on the ground. It was a little bit nerve-wracking, especially after what occurred that caused this whole thing. So we were very concerned about that. So anyway, we're getting the engine lined up with the pin. We got the hoist off of it. And now what we're doing is we're taking off the valve train on the side of the engine that hit the ground. Turns out the valve train was okay. It did get scratched or gouged in a few spots. We like to take care of those gouges and scratches because it could develop cracks and propagate there. So we blended all those scratches out with a file, blew all the chips off, and now what we're doing is just taking the thing apart, the whole rocker arm assembly, because paint got in there. We have to clean out all that red paint because apparently the jar of paint was on the engine when it fell, and you're going to see that paint got into a lot of places that we really didn't want it to go. So got to get that stuff off, got to clean it out. We are taking the intake manifold off because unfortunately I've lost the video for this. I don't know where it went, but we took our endoscope and we took a peek inside the spark plug holes for all the cylinders to see what happened in there, and to our horror and dismay we saw that cylinders, let's see, that would be 1, 3, 5 and 7 were filled with red paint. Really, really disheartening. And that of course means intake manifolds got to come off, cylinder heads got to come off, gaskets get ruined, everything's got to be cleaned out. So there you go, take a look at that. Lovely red paint inside the pistons and cylinders. So what we're trying to do here now is clean off as much of that red gunk out of there as possible, because we're going to have to pop the oil pan and we're going to have to pull those two pistons out. We got to take the rod caps off and pull those pistons out, and we had to basically disassemble all the rings, all the oil control rings. It was really, really disheartening to see this. Just take a look at that. But we were able to clean it all off and meticulously got the paint off of there, and then it was basically a matter of putting it all back together again. So it turns out what broke was one of the exhaust manifolds, cast iron manifold on the passenger side. It took a hard hit and it cracked off the mounting flanges, and it also cracked the studs or the bolts that hold the manifold to the block. So here we are trying to get that broken stud out of the block. I'm beginning to drill it, but then I realized, you know what, this feels kind of loose. I think I might be able to get this thing out of here with just a pick, and sure enough, out it came, because, you know, it was brand new. There was no oxidation, there was no rust, no nothing. So luckily, it came out pretty easy. So obviously, we were very concerned about the valve train, wondering if any of the valve stems got bent, or push rods got damaged, or rocker arms got cracked. We really inspected everything super closely, cleaned off all the grease, made sure everything looked okay. We actuated everything again after it was put together. We saw there was no binding, no damage to the valve stems that we could see. It looked okay, so fingers crossed. We think we lucked out and didn't damage anything internally. We also rotated the crank a few times very slowly after everything was put together again, without the spark plugs, of course. That way you can feel smoothness and if there's any binding, and there was none. So the engine is all put back together again after meticulously being cleaned, inspected, new gaskets, everything's been torqued out again. It's ready to go. It's as good as it's ever going to get. We're highly confident that it's in good shape and it's going to run just fine. But as much as we'd like to see if this engine's going to run, and I know you all want to as well, before we put it in, we really want to clean up the frame and the engine bay. The wiring is a mess. We want to clean that all up. We're scraping all the rust and gunk and grease off from years and years of accumulation. And as you can see, it's what you would expect after nearly 60 years of driving around on roads. A lot of mess, a lot of dirt and stuff that we want to get out of there. That has to be done. So we're also going to be replacing most of the front end components, and that'll be an upcoming video, as well as with the engine bay cleanup and the wiring. We want to make this look nice. Like I said, as eager as we are to see if this engine's going to run, we don't want to put it in, bolt it all up with a nasty looking engine bay. So stick with us, folks. There's more coming. We know you want to see if this engine's going to work. We do too. We're really eager to see if this is going to work. So many of the products that we've used, we have links in our description. If you purchase them using those links, we get a small commission at no cost to you. Really helps us out, because I'll tell you, we've spent way more than we thought we would on this project, but we got to finish it, right? We cannot stop. And anything you purchase using those links would be a tremendous help. We thank you in advance for your support. Truly is appreciated. We even have a Printify shop where you can get all sorts of cool half-ass restorations merchandise. Bluetooth speakers, coffee cups, mugs, t-shirts, hats, all sorts of cool stuff. Check it out. We'll have the link in the description. Anything you purchase helps us out tremendously, and we would appreciate it. Thank you for your support. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because you know you're dying to find out if this engine's going to run or not. Just like we are.